Hey everyone who's watching, welcome to the First Last Podcast, episode 3. This is a late night recording. I have been having a pretty busy schedule this weekend. I was supposed to post, well, I wanted to post earlier, but life said, so I had to try and postpone that. Yeah, been pretty busy. But anyways, um, well, today or should I say tonight, I wanted to talk about quite a few things, right? Um, well, firstly, I gotta say I definitely do realize that I need to upgrade my ability to actually edit. Well, not necessarily edit because I want this to be an unedited podcast, but in terms of actually making the quality of it better. Yeah. Definitely to the camera quality because right now I've just been using my laptop to record, right? Its camera, and I have a feeling that I have to upgrade to a new one. Yeah, and also I have to also look into other avenues in which way I have to go post my podcast. Yeah, I've been thinking about looking into that, but so far YouTube is where I want to just try to get things out, get all comfortable and stuff. Well, not necessarily comfortable, just to gain more knowledge there. Yeah. But anyways, today I want to talk about a few things. One is about how pandemics are linked with innovation. Two, what's happening in the in the oil market. Three, um, the the energy market. Well, the renewable energy or the new energy market that's slowly increasing in Africa. And four, the thing I talked about in the first episode, the central bank distribution coins or CBDs for short, right? So, with the first thing about the pandemics and innovation, excuse me, I've noted that, well, in this pandemic, anyways, there seems to be a pattern. Well, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who's thought of this, right? But I've noticed that pandemics don't necessarily change the way things are. They just only speed up what is supposed to be happening in the first place, right? Almost like a thing of, wow, we've all noticed that it's become more common for people to work from home, right? Thing of, we need more people who will be involved in the tech space, right? Being involved in ways in which people can remotely do things, right? And like as many things possible, shopping, going and hanging out with people, um, are basically communicating either in the either in your personal life or in your work life, right? And it seems to be something that I've noticed that it seems to be in line with the thing of, well, when something bad happens or in times of emergencies, whether in the world or personally, you don't necessarily change. No, I don't consider it as change because change would mean it's completely different. I just consider it to be I just consider what's happening now to be a sped up version of what's supposed to be happening, right? Like for example, Nedbank, for some who don't know, is they recently decided to have a thing where they'll only have 60% of their workers to actually work in their company, I mean the actual building, and 40% will then they will then not work. They will then be working from home, right? So that seems to be a pattern that, well, it started large in large scale companies around the world globally with Google and Microsoft with one of the few who are actually encouraging people to only work from home, right? As to the percentage, I'm not sure about that, but I know that they were encouraging that, right? Same thing with the whole thing of companies such as Google. They were the few who first started to say that to work for them, you don't even need a degree anymore. You just need to have experience and skill that are looking for, right? Because you don't need to necessarily have a degree in a certain field to actually have the skills of those of whatever is in that field, right? IT being the main thing, the thing of programming, right? You don't need to go to university to learn how to code, right? Which is a very useful skill that the marketplace of any country around the world needs, right? And now with the trend now happening in terms of working from home, it seems to be something that is happening more often, right? And with the thing of this company, Nedbank, they I can definitely tell is going to be the first in line. They're just like ahead of the curve in terms of the trend that's happening here in this country, right? I can definitely see that there'll be more companies where if you the thing of like with many companies they need to integrate technology into the actual business, right? And they need people who need to have the skills to do so. But then in doing so, they don't necessarily have to be in the actual like physical space for them to actually do their work, right? Meaning that as we do that more often, there'll definitely be a trend of excuse me, don't know why I'm burping so much. Ooh, finally got that out. A trend of more people actually working remotely. That's going to be a trend that will definitely be happening often here, especially as we are trying to integrate technology more into this country, especially as we do that. So, and also with Nedbank, they have decided to go sell or to go put up a lot of the office spaces into the market, like that they put up for market, if I can say that, yeah, yeah. Which means that there will be a lot more property available, which can be a good thing for people who want office space or just want more more property in general. But then, of course, with the thing I was talking about in the previous episode about how the property market in this country actually isn't necessarily what's the word? In essence, isn't necessarily going well, right? In terms of the fact that like the value has been has been underperforming if you account for inflation has been like doing pretty badly for the past 10 years, right? So I would say that more property being available means that the general value of property in the country will not be as will not be growing as much, or will be actually worsening potentially, right? Because if something that isn't necessarily even valuable is more available out there for people to go buy, there isn't really going to be a high demand for it, right? So it'd be something like that, right? And that just is going in line with the thing of, well, I'm tying it back to the thing of the pandemic and innovation, the thing of, well, a new way of doing things, or should I say, or the way now which I'm putting it is the way things are going to be happening anyways. It'd be very common. I wouldn't be surprised if Capitec also does this, Standard Bank as well, right? Because I know with Standard Bank last year they retrenched a lot of people because they weren't able to keep up with actually maintaining so many employees. So it'll probably be more common to have fewer employees in a company for uh, for for the reason that there isn't necessarily a requirement for a large number of people in the company for it to actually operate, seeing as that the people who can actually do multiple jobs with certain skills they have, and also with the inclusion of automation. But there's a group, a company called Ark Invest that actually talks about the fact that with the increase of technology and integrating it into businesses, it isn't going to just do a thing of eliminating jobs. It's eliminating old jobs and then we'll be creating new ones, right? So from what I'm understanding from them, it's a thing of, well, sort of like what happened with a thing of in factories in the second industrial revolution, third or second. I'm guaranteeing it's third, with the inclusion of actually having machines to do in factories what uh, what our workers used to do, right? In terms of actually creating the actual products in factories. With the inclusion of machinery, there was a whole thing of that they're going to take away jobs, but then it's a thing of like they needed people to understand how to operate those machines and to actually keep with maintenance of those machines, right? Which um, which does seem to somehow fall in the line of what ARC is has been arguing for the past few years, saying that with with the induction of a new revolution, like a new industrial revolution, it's just only going to increase the amount of jobs available and just be removing the jobs from that like were made from the previous industrial revolution, right? So I definitely do think that is the case because there is definite demand of jobs in this country. It's just that there aren't a lot of people who can actually meet with the actual requirements of those jobs. That's what I'm noticing, anyways, right? School isn't necessarily preparing a lot of people with actually being able to understand what they actually going to be going into, right? Because it's very the way in which the markets work is very, and they very they're very chaotic in the sense that there's always something that is being included in terms of what you need to know, but then the structure of an institution like schools, whether it be primary, um, high school, secondary, tertiary, it's very stagnant in that sense, right? It's very hard for high schools to actually for schools to actually include the new information that is constantly being um, made in the markets, right? Sort of like a delayed, a delayed, what can I call it? There is sort of like a delay in terms of like information that schools use to instruct children in terms of what they have to know versus what like the marketplace actually wants you to know. I mean, it's only that's why there's a reason that's why the president has been trying to, well, the president of this country, Mr. Mr. Ramaphosa, right? With him having a thing of trying to include coding or have computers in all schools, because the fact that in the marketplace they need people who know how to actually use computers and not just do the basic thing of Word, but to actually know how to understand what a computer is, how it functions, and how to actually use it to create to create things like presentations and projects, so on and so forth, right? So that's just the thing of emergencies and innovations. Yeah, yeah. And then with the next topic of oil, just a little brief thing that I've noted in that it's, well, OPEC seems to be getting desperate in terms of trying to keep their relevancy in the world, right? Because to me, the sign of a healthy product, or a product that uh, has very has very has a sustainable growth for the future, is that the the demand of it is higher than the actual supply, right? It is kind of hard to quantify demand, I would imagine, but from what I'm seeing, it's a thing of that. Well, in terms of demand, just means um, a various amount of applications that haven't been met yet, right? For example, in the semiconductor industry, right, with the actual creation of chips, there is there's a massive shortage of them, a massive one, and what they are used for is basically is anything that involves the use of technology, right? Phones, laptops, TVs, games, while gaming consoles, right? Certain machines in factories, cars, even with the inclusion of EVs, right? Like in terms of their applications, it's so vast. But then in terms of what's available for companies to use, it's comparatively non-existent, if I can say that, right? Like because of the whole pandemic and shutdowns happening, um, and lack of restrictions, the amount of chips available is so low that that they don't even know as to when the world will able to actually go and able um, to actually go ahead and keep up with actual a demand that has been increasingly being made, right? Because especially with the pandemic, people having to use more equipment, tech wise, right? So yeah, so like with that example with oil, right? OPEC seems to be now doing a thing of artificially making demand by restricting the supply available of oil. That's why the price of it's so high now, right? And that for me is pretty interesting, right? The thing that they are recognizing that with renewable energy actually slowly being something that is actually cost effective now, because that was the only argument of it was that it's not really cost effective because in terms of the energy output, it's greater than what oil has been used for, right? And and with that being said, it to me it does seem like a desperate move in terms of what they're doing, actually restricting the actual amount of oil that can be available for the world to use. It's kind of like they're trying to hold on to their power because they know it's actually disappearing, right? And I don't know if that's sad or if that's something that is a sign of what is to come, right? So basically, like renewable energy is definitely going to be something that will not only replace the non-renewable oils like oil. I mean, the non-renewable the energy. Don't know why I say non-renewable oils, but yeah, with oil, coal, natural gas, so on and so forth, right? Like for example, in Egypt, there's recently been a deal made to actually see if it's possible to actually create a factory that can actually produce hydrogen energy in Egypt. And it was an agreement done with a French country. I mean, French country, a French, it's called like a French company. Its name is called Eni, I believe. Yeah, it was recently this I guess agreement was made like last month, if I'm correct. Yeah, it was last month, right? And they're doing the thing of seeing if it's actually possible to actually have hydrogen energy to actually produced in Egypt, right? And with Egypt it was mainly used as a place to actually use oil as a form of energy. Now they're trying to look into seeing other to actually see like other renewables, which well for me is just showing that with to me it's just showing that like renewable energy is going to be something huge in this continent, right? Because there's even a thing of there's even been some a whole bunch of studies saying that Africa is one of the best places to actually get solar energy from, even, which to me is letting me know that because we are capable, we're probably gonna be one of the largest role players in terms of solar energy anyway, specifically because that was a study that was being talked about solar energy being um, it's talked about being solar energy being the like a large type of energy that can actually be um, created here. And then this was due to what is it again? The thing of that we have the like with the kind of climates we have, and also the way in which we're angled to the sun, we are able to actually we actually have like a large amount of heat that's directly on contact in the way in which we're angled and stuff. It was pretty complicated for me to understand. So it took me a while to understand, but I think from what it's saying was that it's actually hard to actually try and produce solar energy um, in countries or like in places that are like that are close to other poles, right? And also like with places that aren't necessarily in in like in like what to call it, indirectly in line, if that's the word I can use, with the sun, because of the way the earth is actually angled at, like, it's, from what I understand, the earth is angled like 33 degrees on its axis, something like that, yeah. And so basically with the way in which, like, way in which, like, Africa is A, structured, and B, in way it's angled at to the sun, we're actually able to potentially be a place where we can actually create a whole lot of solar energy. Yeah, and that was even that seems to have some truth to it, especially with the thing I was talking about in the first episode, I believe, where I was saying that there was recently like a project to be agreed to be made in Namibia, and also in Botswana, if I'm correct, yeah, with the U.S. government, saying that they're gonna create, like, those three countries are gonna create something called the Mega Solar Project, which is basically gonna be, oh, excuse me, which is basically gonna be a play. It's basically gonna be a project where there's going to be large areas of those of like of Namibia and Botswana, where they're gonna have large areas where there'll be a whole bunch of panels that will be creating solar energy, self-sustaining solar energy. From what I'm remembering from that article that I read, which was on ESI Africa, yeah, esiafrica.com, yeah. But yeah, like all of these new updates is definitely showing us to where we're gonna be getting energy from in the future, right? I mean, there's even a thing where in Senegal, a food a company that mainly produces food, they're planning on making a solar plant where they're gonna be having that plant to be a place where they're gonna get energy from, instead of using I believe they're using oil at the time, right? And they're planning on making that. And as for its date of production, I'm not sure, but there's definitely some moves being made in the world um, in terms of renewable energy being something that is going to be feasible. Like, it's going to be as common as oil and coal, right? And then, speaking of coal, in this country, I recently read up on the latest energy sector report that was made in this country, in terms of um, it is basically a thing in which we're just having a review being done in terms of um, where exactly do we get our energy from, which sectors use up what kind of energy, and also with the fact that it's going to be incentives being made for the private sector to actually to grow in terms of its energy sector, to actually have renewables be a more common thing, right? So it's so like essentially this country, we do recognize that there is a growing need for for like the renewable energy sector to grow, and with that the government is basically like incentivizing the private sector for to actually try and allow it to grow, because it's been stifled for so long of um, of us thinking that we all need ESCOM, because they are the largest producer of energy in this country, which, well, it was bound to die out anyways. Like in my opinion was it was bound to die out because it's too large for any kind of growth. It really is. I mean, yes, they did have a new they are currently making a new licensing agreement to actually try and get a site of land to make another nuclear a power plant. But in terms of trying to go and transition to to renewable energy, I don't think it's feasible for them, because of the fact that, well, like the largest cash cow is coal, and with the world not needing that anymore, it's going to be hard for them to really go ahead and try and transition and try and change the whole power grid, because they control 95% of the power in this country. So it's going to be hard for them to try and switch in a way that doesn't actually in a way that doesn't actually harm their own business, and that's going to be hard to do, because to even try and go to actually create energy, or to go and use like a new form of energy, or to even create these power plants, these new kind of power plants, the solar, wind, not wind, with solar, with hydrogen, and so on and so forth. Those kind of like renewable energies, they are very capital intensive, and capital is something that they seem to be lacking anyways. Or, well, funds overall, right? I mean, they have like a whole bunch of the funds are going towards paying off the debt that they have, the massive amount of debt that seems to have been increasing every year, right? So I don't see them actually being able to do so, right? So it's gonna be so in the near future in this country, we're definitely gonna be seeing a rise in private companies. We're gonna be seeing a rise in the private sector actually getting involved in the production of energy. Yeah, definitely. Which I personally am excited about, because to me the whole idea of using the sun, or using hydrogen energy is like, so like it's so futuristic to me, right? Because I used to read stuff like this in comics, and now to see it happen in front of my eyes is like, it's insane. But yeah, that seems to be where the world is, and well, seems to be where the world is going towards. Yeah. So we'll definitely be seeing companies that mine out these old these old forms of energy, or these old materials like oil and stuff. They they're gonna either transition, or they're gonna be filing for bankruptcy, or probably just gonna be shutting down. I mean, it's a common thing that's happening in America. Well, not common, but it is a pattern that's happening in America and also around the world. Yeah. It's also, and also the fact the world's with so many countries declaring that they're gonna be um, emitting zero carbon emissions by 2050. I believe, yeah, a bunch of countries are actually committing to doing that, and with China saying 2060, there's definitely a thing of that energy, of the way in which you produce energy will definitely it's definitely changing, and the speed of it is faster than anticipated, right? Because I watched an interview with the CEO of NEMSA on Business Day TV. He was saying that the play. Okay, so basically, like with NEMSA, that is the National Wait, let me look up the name before I screw it up. Namsa. Nam. Before I even ruin that name. Whoa, getting so many different terminologies here. No, both not add a. What is this thing? Oh, the National Association of Automobile Manufacturers of South Africa. So NAMSA stands for. Basically, with them, the CEO of that was talking up on this day TV on Friday, I believe, saying that one of the main places in which they go and export cars at, I mean, go and export cars to, is the UK and Europe. And with Europe, they have been saying to NAMSA that they're going to be stopping, that they won't be buying cars from us that actually use all forms of energy to actually work, right? So like any car that use like oil, petrol, they won't be buying cars like that from us within the next 5 years, 5 or 6 years, right? Because with Europe, um, essentially there was research being done by this company called IHS Market, basically saying that with Europe, in by time it's 2030, about 40% of the sales in vehicles are going to be based on EVs, electronic vehicles, right? So basically, there are incentives being made for us in this country to actually try and learn how to make cars that use that actually use like a renewable energy, right? Which is gonna be hard because the one thing that's affecting us of actually trying to create those things is the cost of it, the cost of actually producing it, and the cost in terms of the actual vehicles itself, right? Because from the study, from the research I found, the average car in terms of its cost that we can buy in this country, the average South African can buy is around about 300,000, and the cheapest EV that's in that is available in this country, it's called the Mini Electric, and it costs about 600,000, right? So cost is definitely a big factor of us, and also because of because of the fact that we're actually getting the materials, not necessarily the materials, but yeah, I can definitely say materials, and also the people who actually come and show us how to actually make these vehicles. They're coming from like outside the country, right? And because of the fact that our currency is pretty weak, it's actually very costly for us to actually make those things. So it's going to be very important for us to actually know how to actually use like renewable energy resources to actually know how to make these vehicles, so we can actually learn how to actually make it, so we can able to go like and produce it for ourselves in a way in which it will drop the cost down, allow us to actually go and continue to export to places like Europe, and also try and like implement the use of the use of EVs in this country. Yeah, man. All of this to me is like, man, energy is gonna be huge in the future, or should I say, it's becoming huge. Most definitely, so many moves being made. Oh, and with the incentive of so many countries, China emits like zero carbon emissions. We're definitely seeing where all of this is going. OPEC, I don't know what's gonna happen to OPEC. Man, I really don't, and I really want to see where they're gonna go, right? Because I mean, Saudi Arabia, I mean, and Kuwait, the Kuwait currency, yo, unless they switch to renewable, man, the currency is gonna drop, because from what I understand, they seem to have the strongest currency in the world. I mean, one Kuwait dinar is like 50 rand, man. And then with the reason of them being so big, it's because they're one of the um, they one of they're a country that has one of the largest reserves of oil, right? So basically, their leverage is oil, and once that drops, or once they switch to using renewable energy, it's like what's gonna happen to them in the future, right? I mean, the currency. I mean, what's gonna happen to that? And then speaking of currency, CBDs, central bank distribution coins. Man, man. Where to even start there? I mean, there's even been a thing now of um, of New Zealand actually making their own feasibility study into actually seeing if seeing as to how to actually implement the use of their own CBDs, right? Because with the whole thing of COVID, there's definitely a incentives to actually go to being a cashless society, and none more so than New Zealand, right? So basically, they're trying to see how they could implement the use of CBDCs in their country, seeing as that being cashless something that was being heavily encouraged during COVID. And CBDCs, man, the implications of that to me is showing that cryptocurrencies are definitely going to be a big thing. And while like with a CBDCs being something that like many countries can use, if you think about the fact that it's basically a way in which to go like and completely digitize like your actual currency, it's going to be pretty useful, especially in a country like here, like here in South Africa, right? Because that's gonna like basically like it's basically gonna be like eliminating a large part of armed robberies with the whole thing of cash and transits, um, with like those trucks always having an issue of actually being robbed and stuff. If you take away that, then it's gonna be like it's gonna be definitely gonna be like a beneficial move, especially for us in this country, right? The whole thing of that if it's going to be if the currency is going to be completely digitized, then there'll be a thing of first of all instantaneous transactions, not necessarily instantaneous but very quick. And because of the fact that we greater speed, the fees to actually go and transfer money or to go and do deposits or withdrawals. Well, withdrawals happen if you have CBDCs, huh? But then again, cashless society means that ATMs might be removed. I mean, I don't see how that can happen because of the fact that banks go and get the cash from the Reserve Bank, right? So if there's no cash in transit happening, meaning that banks won't be having to actually have their cash in a physical vault, but actually in a digital one, meaning that basically it means that withdrawals won't be a thing in the future. I mean, it does make sense, but oh man, that definitely makes sense. But then I didn't realize it now. I don't know why. This blowing my mind though now. Don't even realize it. But yeah, huh. But anyways, though, yeah, like with the thing of speed being such an important thing, um, not necessarily just important, but it actually being something that will be used that will be of great importance, meaning that the cost of actually moving around your money will be lower, right? So, like with that, the use of CBDCs has actually been argued. There's actually been arguments and counter arguments, right? Because of the fact that with the argument of like CBDC, essentially saying that it's taking away the use of cryptocurrencies, which isn't necessarily the case, right? Because yes, even though like with cryptocurrency, they have a thing of that you can it's supposed to be it's supposed to basically be instantaneous transactions i- at any point around the world, right? And then now the issue with like CBDC is that even though they're trying to like imitate that, they're still controlled by like one group, which is like the Reserve Bank of any country. And then with cryptocurrencies, they aren't the actual system itself of whatever coin it is. It isn't well, like I mean, like the good ones, anyways, aren't supposed to be isn't supposed to be controlled by any person or anyone, right? Like, yes, there've been a bunch of scams with like all these, well, like all these cryptocurrencies, but the reason of those scams is because people trying to make money from it because they're trying to see it being seeing every single like cryptocurrency being like the next Bitcoin in terms of it making you money, right? But then with Bitcoin, the reason as to why it's growing so its value so high is because it's literally a store of value that's similar to gold, which kind of does frustrate me in terms of people like like with people getting scammed so much, right? With like with all these people making like all these billions of rands or dollars or euros, pounds, etc. And so many people who unfortunately don't recognize what they're actually getting into. The thing of just the very like a very important thing of investing in what you understand is so important, right? But so many people just seem to miss that because they're so blindsided by the by the potential profits being made. They don't recognize as whether or not they're falling into a trap. Which, well, which partially you can say isn't necessarily their fault because of how hard it is for many people, right? I mean, like, isn't the thing of like 90% of the world is owned by 60 is like owned by 1% of the population, something like that, right? So like a whole bunch of people are struggling, so there is a thing of desperation being to be included as well, right? Yeah, which is kind of understandable. Just I guess it is human nature in a way to actually have so many people being led to destruction. But unfortunately, that has to be the way for which the for people of the future to learn, right? But yeah, though, like with anyways, back to the thing of CBDCs, like with so many countries actually looking into it now or how to actually implement it, it's kind of showing that well, the same thing I talked about in the first episode that like with cryptocurrency is gonna be definitely a big player because of the fact that well, like for example with a country like El Salvador, right, with using a Bitcoin as a form of legal tender, it's basically showing that it's showing the thing I was talking about of in the first episode that many what can I say? Many currencies aren't really they aren't strong in value, like at all. Like as I said, all currencies are basically all fiat currencies are going down to zero. They'll just hit that line because of inflation and also the fact that because the fact that with any central bank they're able to go and produce as much as they want of it through quantitative easing, meaning that there's always going to be an oversupply of it, right? And something like a Bitcoin with it being limited in its supply, meaning that its demand will always be greater. There's always going to be an a theoretically unlimited demand for it, right? Yeah, but of course, not all cryptocurrencies like that, right? Like Ethereum, Cardano, Ripple, Chainlink. Um, but while I am talking, I am realizing that I feel like some people won't necessarily understand what I'm talking about. So I would definitely encourage people to well, those the reasons why I made this podcast anyways was to encourage people to go ahead and learn about all these things, to learn about where they can actually go and potentially make to actually grow their money in, right? Because well, I mean, it's very nice to know to actually want to actually make money, but learning about it is a process that isn't necessarily for everyone. It's because basically it's a skill to actually know how to use all these things I'm talking about to advantage, right? Kind of like the skill of cooking, skateboarding, swimming, fighting, climbing. Like not everyone can do them. Certain people are built for certain things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't learn. But in terms of how much you understand, it might not be as great as the next person, right? Because I don't know this much because I'm someone who, if they enjoy something, like they're obsessed with it, and then with me, I really enjoy the whole idea of learning about the financial markets, to learn about where the world's actually going in terms of how the very concept of trade is actually being used, right? Like how that concept is just has grown and taken over the world, and how we're using new ways just to go do that same thing, right? Of exchanging goods or services for, and this time just using what's the word? A simplified way, I guess, of actually trading goods and services, and then creating a fixed point of value to actually determine how much those goods and services are worth. I am definitely like 100%. Not this 100% because I ain't gonna lie, I am a lazy person, so I want 100%, but I'm definitely am interested in such things. Yeah, yeah. But anyways, that's it for the podcast. I will release some new episodes next week, and thank you to whoever's watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye.